Let's go and talk a little bit about the housing and the rental market real quick here, because I know that not everybody is going to be looking at, not everyone is going to want to, um, buy a house immediately. That's perfectly fine. A lot of people kind of want to just get their feet under them at first. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what's going on with the rental market. And this is actually pretty interesting to me just because we have seen some movement lately. And let me go and cancel that real quick. I'm going to make sure that I don't show you guys a listing presentation that I just did. So let me close out of that. All right, coming at you in 3, 2, and well, that's not it either. Oh, it just closed down. All right, well, you guys are gonna have to watch me over here doing my best. There we go. All right, share the screen. There we go. Figuring this out step by step. So one article that I found very useful when we're kind of getting an idea for what's going on in the rental market here in kind of South Central Alaska and Alaska in general is going to be this article that came from the Alaska Economic Trends that came out just a little bit ago. And it's really solid because it's very numbers based. It's comes from the state, so the sources of the data is usually going to be pretty solid. Once you start looking at the housing, I can definitely add some more insights to it, but by and large, it's pretty accurate. So, title here of the article: higher rents, fewer vacancies. So that is definitely something that you see reflected in this article. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit so you can see the numbers a bit better, but rents are definitely going up in some areas. Looking specifically here in Anchorage, the cost of renting back in 2021 was about just shy of $1,200, and now it's sitting at about $1,339, which is about a 14% increase for the average, average amount of renting in Anchorage. Now, there are definitely reasons for that. And that's something I've been trying to figure out. It's like, well, how come, the pandemic and everything that's happened, why would that result in higher rents? It's not like we suddenly just had, miraculously more people up here. Like looking at the data, we actually have losing a population of about 2,000 a year recently. So, why are we seeing this? Well, one of the reasons that they kind of point out is the heating prices, because the cost of oil is going to be impacting everything. But the heating prices they dispel right off the bat is not the reason that we're seeing an increase here, because usually in Alaska, the price of heating is going to be covered by the tenant, unless you're renting out an entire house. But across the board, rents rose in most areas, especially in Anchorage, as we talked before. Anchorage is sitting at about 14%. The entire total is just over 8. If we're looking at the Mat-Su Valley, the rent is about $1,050 this time last year. And it's gone up a little bit, but not too much. It's just under $1,100 for the average, which means it's gone up approximately 4%. And you can obviously go down here and check out the rest of the rents here, but by and large, that's, Anchorage is going to be the lion's share. If you're looking at Ketchikan or Wrangell and St. Petersburg, you actually see a decrease there. So there you go. If you're looking for a place where it's going to be less expensive compared to the year before, that's all you go. So they kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's see here. Trying to just give you guys the highlights. Yeah, so one thing that they also wanted to make sure that we knew in this article is Alaska, it's really just starting to follow the trend of the rest of the country. because this is kind of the way the rents have been in the entire U.S. and this is Alaska. Past couple of years, it hasn't been. If you're a landlord, that's not great, and that's something you heard a lot of investors really worried about. Great if you're a tenant, not great if you're a landlord. But then, this thing called the pandemic happened, and then suddenly all of our rents started going up, and now it's just kind of keeping pace with what the rest of the U.S. is doing. So might be going up, yes, but realistically, it's just kind of keeping pace with what we're seeing here. So why exactly are we seeing an increase in the rental prices? Well, a big theory that they have here is because the cost of housing is going up, and the people who would normally be going and trying to purchase their first property are suddenly having to wait. And they're having, instead of going and buying a house, they're having to find a rental property. And, this is especially pertinent for, kind of the younger age group where they might be moving out of the house for the first time from their parents. And, they were planning on going and buying a house, and now they're having to go rent instead. Let's see. Evictions are another source of rental vacancies. While the federal moratorium on evictions ended in August of 21, federal emergency rental, Alaska has no publicly available eviction data. More than 26,000 renters, about 3 in 10, received a share of the $262 million in rental assistance distributed during the pandemic to help tenants pay back rents and utilities and offset future payments. So, that's starting to go away a little bit too. We haven't really seen a whole lot of people not paying their rent up here. By and large, people were pretty good about continuing to pay their rent. You had a couple people that were kind of using the system, but by and large, people kind of stayed up with their rents. All right, so we kind of talked about that a little bit. I'm going to try not to read everything here for you, but longer-term demographic trends are another possible factor, as the number of people in the age range most likely to rent has grown. So the tail end of the large millennial generation reached young adulthood during the past decade, raising the number of people between the ages of 30 and 40. In 2020, about 60% of renters in the state were younger than 45. Nationally, this generation is also buying their first homes later than previous generations. So there's definitely definitely going to be some demographics that are going along with that. Construction, obviously, that's kind of in a decline. Where we see the most people renting is going to be over in Anchorage, and the powers that be are making it a little bit more difficult to build, especially new, multifamily properties. So that's definitely playing into it as well. And another fact that he brought up, which I found kind of interesting, is we are seeing some properties being transitioned over from just being strictly rental properties and being turned into short-term rentals, AKA Airbnbs. And we're really not seeing a whole lot of data around that to know exactly how many of them are being converted. But we do know that it is definitely playing a factor. In some places that are very tourist heavy, for instance, like in Seward, it's not that big of a town, but they have over 200 Airbnbs that are available. So you can imagine how big of an impact that can have on your city. Not saying that you shouldn't have long-term planning with your city and all that to make sure that 200 people going into an Airbnb is not going to make you go completely belly up, but it's definitely a lot to try to absorb all at once. So another big issue that's seen the rental rates go up is there's just been less vacancies going on. If you're in a place right now and you're somewhat happy, you're probably not wanting to jump back into the market to try to find something. And most landlords are perfectly fine keeping a tenant where they're at, maybe with a slight increase. But as a landlord, for instance, like I have a fourplex of my own, every day one of those units is vacant costs me $50. So the prospect of, going, oh, well, great, I can get an extra $100 a month if I get somebody else in here, I am perfectly fine just increasing it slightly and keeping that person in there, because a vacancy is going to be way more expensive than any increase I can do. All right, let's take a look real quick here. By and large, we're seeing that rent is still affordable. It's still affordable on average, but it's not exactly the entire story. Let's see here. Yeah, rent really has gone up everywhere since 2020. Rising wages have made renting more affordable in all surveyed areas except Anchorage, where rent increases have outpaced average wage growth. But even with Anchorage's historic rent increase in 2022, it remained among the most affordable places surveyed. In 2022, renting in Anchorage required less than 25% of the average monthly paycheck, up from 21% in 2021. And in line with Anchorage's affordability for most of the past decade. Higher average wages in Anchorage help offset its higher rents. In most areas, rents required between 22 and 27% of the average wage workers' monthly wages. And let's see here, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that historically about 40% of renters in Alaska have spent over 30% of their household income on rent and utilities. And yeah, the people are going to be younger here in this area as well. So that is a lot of numbers that I just kind of threw at you guys, and I'm sure I probably lost some of you, but that's what we're seeing as far as the rental market here in the area. Jill, can you speak a little bit, what you've heard from people who are trying to find rentals right now in this market?
Yeah, so I don't know how I did it when I got up here, but I just kind of fell into the rental I'm in, and hearing everybody else's story, it was really, really lucky. It's very, very difficult to find a rental right now, at least in the valley. I just feel like there's not a lot of units available, and it's hard to find places that are actually advertising those units as well. Most people that are moving up here are finding that if they don't have housing secured before they come up here, it's taking 1 to 2 months to find an available unit to rent. The other thing that's challenging, and this isn't unique to Alaska, is sometimes if you have pets, it's a little challenging finding a unit as well, because not everybody wants to rent to somebody that has a pet. So along with that rise in the rental costs, Jamin, I think a lot of it has to do probably with the fact that landlords can dictate what they charge for rent, and they can be picky because there really aren't that many rental units that are available. It's a hard market.
It is, and I'm probably going to make a video specifically on this topic, so you guys are kind of getting I guess, the VIP behind the scenes treatment here. But if you're looking and you're not really finding the options that you're trying to find some of the best things you can do is probably to, number one, go and find some Airbnb options. Now, I'm not saying go stay in the Airbnb at the nightly rate that they have. No, what you're trying to do is you want to go find the runt of the litter on Airbnb. Now, these are the properties where they're not rented very much. They only have 1 or 2 reviews. The pictures don't look great. They obviously haven't gotten a whole lot of traffic. These are the folks where if you approach them and say, hey, how about I'll come in, I'll rent it from you for this amount, bit of a discount from the monthly or the nightly rate, and I'll just be a tenant for a couple months or however long you need to be there. There's a chance that they're going to be willing to take you on there, and no guarantees, but like I said, you really want to make sure you find the runt of the litter, the one that's not particularly performing very well on Airbnb, and that's going to be the one you're going to have your best chances on. Don't try this with the one that's got like over 100 reviews and is booked solid for a month. They're not even going to respond. Another tip I would have for those of you who are looking at, finding a rental up here. Jill's 100% correct. If you don't have pets, that definitely does help out quite a bit. If you do have, pets, obviously just kind of lean into it as best you can. Just be very upfront with them. Because some landlords are not going to be too thrilled about having pets in their properties, and some of them are going to be just fine with it. And they're out there. You just have to be really cognizant for what you're looking for. I found that a lot of Facebook groups are great places to go to try to get that attention and try to have a little bit more connection with the people that you're trying to reach out to. Some of those groups, just go look up on Facebook anything involving rental, Alaska, real estate rental, stuff like that, are going to be great resources for you. But, like I said, I'm probably going to be doing a video and talking more specifically about places you can go, stuff you can use, strategies you can utilize in order to help you to find a rental up here. But Jill, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think that's a really interesting point. I think you're right with Facebook. I think marketing is a good thing up here, and word of mouth is also really big up here as well. Like if you can find groups that are either rental groups or, looking for groups, something like that, and introduce yourself to people and let people know what you're looking for. I think that's a better way to find something as well. I know of a lot of people that have had success that way, where they're able to market a little bit more. The other thing with that is I'm sure this comes about from people getting burned in the past, but landlords want to know that you have a good rental history or that you have employment secured and things like that. They want to feel comfortable with you renting their property, that you're going to leave it in a good way, that you're not going to completely destroy it. So, and that especially goes for if you have a pet or something like that. They want to know that you're going to take care of it.
Exactly. One idea too might be to take pictures of the property that you just vacated and say, hey, this is what it looks like, and this is how your property is going to look too. So, if pets is really the big issue you're running into, that might be a strong option for you. So, not every landlord's going to be the same way. Some of them couldn't care less. Some of them are going to care a lot. And you just have to kind of understand who it is that you're talking to. Let's go ahead and go through. Yeah, let's go ahead and go through a couple of questions here. Let's see here. People that moved, what did you bring and leave behind? We have a 5-bedroom house. Feels like a massive chore to get all that stuff up there. Yeah, that's a lot.
I can tell you my experience with that. So there were a lot of things that were left behind, but there were things that I was not willing to part with. Certain things like dressers, got rid of. If it was an older mattress, got rid of it. I kept my kitchen table because it was a birthday present and it is beautiful and I would not part with it. So I think a lot of it just depends on what you can and cannot part with. If you can part with something, if you don't have a strong emotional connection to it, or it's not a family heirloom, sure, get rid of it, because getting things up here can be expensive. I would not leave my motorcycle behind. That was one of the things that it's like, I'm not parting with that. Could I have found one up here? Maybe, but I wasn't parting with it. So if you have something that you are strongly connected to, or it's an item that you may not be able to find easily up here, I would say bring it. But if it's things that you're like, oh, I got this secondhand, or it's older, or we don't really need this, get rid of it. It can be replaced. There is Costco, there is Walmart, Amazon will ship certain things up here. And so things can be replaced. But if it's something that you really, really, really want, bring it along.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where I was pretty lucky in my stage of life where, single guy, no kids, and I literally was able to consolidate it down to two checked bags and carry on. So that's probably about as streamlined as you can get. I do not suspect you'll be able to do that yourself, but if you guys can, like Jill said, consolidate down as best you can, because if you don't, you're going to find out pretty quickly why everything is so expensive up here.
It is, and it's not a cheap move, to be honest. Like, luckily, my work paid for a lot of the relocation costs. Um, I use the company UShip. Is that the one where you like get a storage unit container and you can ship it? We used that. And then we also ended up buying like a 45-foot enclosed trailer. And pretty much if it didn't fit in that little shipping bin and it didn't fit in the trailer, it didn't come. So there were things like dressers and beds that it's like, yeah, it's not going to make the trip, and that's okay. I got a new mattress out of it.
There you go. There you go. Silver lining.
Yeah.
So let's see. We're going to just answer a couple more questions here. Let's see. I'm assuming this is talking about with Dave about let's see, what kind of firearms you need for bears. Really the best thing that I've seen, and this is back and forth in a conversation I actually had on YouTube just a little bit ago. Statistically, the best results from the bear encounter are when somebody has bear spray, and instead of necessarily having a firearm. And the reason for that is if you have just a firearm, let's say things do go sideways, you can't avoid the bear, the bear's not having it, then you have to use the firearm. Well, a bear can get shot and the adrenaline's going to be going and it can still do some damage. Meanwhile, if you have bear spray, though, and you hit that thing right in the face, it's going to have some involuntary bodily responses that it can't avoid. And so statistically, I saw it was about 72%, goes about 72% better with those encounters when you have just bear spray versus just a gun.
Just a firearm.
Yeah, obviously, the best thing you can do is have both and just, rely on the bear spray, and like the firearm is like worst comes to worst case, though.
Obviously, you've been up here a lot longer than me. I ask everybody like how often they've seen a bear. I've seen one bear up here, and it was actually down on the Kenai Peninsula last year. We've been out here hunting moose, and I haven't seen a bear yet.
What?
We've been walking. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of moose either, so apparently I am doing something wrong. But personally, on my person, I pack a 44 Magnum revolver in camp just in case. We have a 45-70 lever action rifle, and I've heard a lot of people will like either a 40 caliber handgun or a 10 millimeter. To be honest, any of those are going to be just fine for bears. But if we're being realistic, you are more likely to get trampled by a moose than you are to be attacked by a bear. The moose are much more aggressive and much more, you're much more likely to encounter a moose than you are to encounter a bear. Most of the time, if a bear sees you, they're going to run off the other way unless, it's a mama and cubs. But the moose are quite aggressive. You are more likely to encounter a moose, and you're more likely to have an unfriendly encounter with a moose than you are a bear.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something most people want to think about. So, I mean, I've run into bears a number of times. None of them have been like aggressive or anything close by any stretch of the imagination, but they're usually where you don't expect to find them. I actually ran into one like while I was just running in the residential areas in Eagle River.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, just running through the neighborhoods and, boom. Oh, there's a black bear. Cool.
Yeah. And I think that's probably something that needs to be mentioned. You're much more likely to see bears if you live in Eagle River for whatever reason. They're not out in the valley as much as they are in the Eagle River area.
Yeah, well, the reason for that is you've got that 50 square mile Chugach State Park that's like
Oh
right
yeah.
there. That's a big state park where you can't really hunt them back there. And
Hmm.
so they just multiply back there like crazy because there's no way to really control the population. Meanwhile, Mat-Su, yeah, obviously not the case. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, definitely there. You know what? I should probably avoid this question, but I'm gonna take it anyway, though. From Samuel, are there specific neighborhoods of Anchorage to aim for or avoid for renting? Um, I'm always going to tell you if it looks too good to be true, then it's probably too good to be true. So pay attention to the price. Once you've got kind of a sense for what the market rate is in Anchorage, and we've kind of talked about the averages, if you find something for like $500, that might be an indication that it might be too good to be true, and you should look a little bit closer and look at the crime maps. According to Fair
Hmm.
Housing, you're not really allowed to say good area, bad area, but I can kind of be the source for you and kind of direct you where you need to go. Um, let's see. Other than that, one other thing I did want to mention real quick. I'm seeing a lot of people online, and I've got a lot of data on this, but I know most people don't get as excited about going over numbers as I do, so I'll just summarize. A lot of people are talking about, oh, foreclosures, they're coming back, and this is going to be the next big wave, and we're going to wait to get a discount. And couldn't be further from the truth, especially up here in Alaska. So a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, there was about 260 foreclosed properties that were purchased. There was about 240 that were purchased the next year. Then it was 150. And this year it's like 64. Okay. And the total number of foreclosures available in the entire state right now is 10. That's it. So foreclosures only really happen when you see a collapse in the prices for people that have been in trouble lately. You really can't tell just because the market is so strong and they're able to put their property on the market and get it sold, and you never knew they were in any kind of trouble just because the market was so strong and you needed to buy something as soon as possible. So kind of this idea that this big collapse is going to be happening. Obviously, I can always be wrong. No one's crystal ball is 100%. Not really seeing it in the near future. For there to be any kind of a collapse, we need to see a drop in the prices. And while the inventory remains so low, that's not likely to happen anytime soon. All right, let's see here. Jill, you down to take a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Let's see, folks, you got any other questions here? I'm trying to go through, kind of cull through here. Yeah, so one question I did see from earlier, though. Let's see, there we go. Let's go with this one. Doctor of Dragon Studies, like the title, like the name. So how is the job market right now, specifically for industrial jobs? So when you say industrial jobs, I'm assuming you're talking more factory based? Are we talking more construction? Let's see. So if we're talking more about that, I mean, really, it's not a specific industry, but it's more about the hard labor skills you'll be able to take from one job and take it to the other. I kind of talked about it before in some other videos, but really the big thing is if you have kind of those hard skills, you'll be able to transfer those over into other positions that are actually pretty lucrative right at the moment. For instance, there are HVAC companies where they are literally bringing people in from out of state just because they can't find anyone to work on their HVAC, on the heating, the water heaters, the boilers. So if you're skilled in that area, then that's definitely a strong option for you to come up here and work in that. Let's see. But yeah, as far as factory, Yeah, okay. So factory or skilled labor. If you're skilled labor, you should probably do pretty good up here. Does that sound about right, Jill?
I think so. I mean, honestly, if you've got certifications and you have job experience, then I think you can do probably well wherever you go. Um, I find that Indeed is probably a really good place to look for jobs. I feel like most companies that are looking for skilled laborers they will advertise on Indeed.
Outstanding.